Hello and welcome to the show for this week. My name is Valkyria Verder. It's Valkyrie of the Veil. That is the more easy English version of the name of the title. November 10th through the 18th is the time frame we're looking at for this week. Remember last week how I said everything was gonna change? Now we are adjusting. There's still some things that are gonna change, and we're still in like pretty serious transits right now. So let's work with how to navigate them. Not just navigate them, there could be some actual good stuff on a personal level that comes in this week. Venus moves into Capricorn, which is going to be one of the bigger things I think I'm going to focus on today, but we'll see. We will see as we keep on going. If you are interested in seeing the exact transit dates and what is going on with the specifics, if you want to check out the blog, there is always going to be or if you're coming from the blog, thanks so much for the support. There's always going to be an email sent out with the exact transit dates on them so that you know kind of what to expect when, and that way you don't just have to hear it, you have an actual thing that you can look at and see it as well. Also on the blog too, I send out different email updates and just like magic fundamentals and different things I'm doing that I'm learning, different things that I'm learning in my practice that are applicable, or if there's certain transits that I want to focus on and send out some more kind of like general, sometimes specific information or collective information rather, that will be on the blog as well, which is also connected to the YouTube. Beautiful, love that for everybody and myself. It's great, you know? One of the things I'm starting on the blog this month is for the exclusive subscribers, there's going to be updates on the new moons and the aspects of them and like very specific integrations of what those new moons look like. In the podcast, I go over very general things that are happening and like the moon phases and the big transits that we work with and that affect us. That's true. And also for those exclusive subs on the blog, I focus on for the new moons going over like very in detailed, very in-depth astrological perspectives in case you are working any sort of ritual or anything that you might be doing for those new moons to kind of like get yourself set up for that next month. So those are available for the exclusive subs. The other thing I'm starting this month, and I've thought about it, I think I'm going to send these out about once a month, is going to be based on the more like adult forms of magic, more advanced forms of magic when it comes to your ancestral roots or anything that has to do with animal roots, adult activities that could be technically considered magic also. I'm going to be, it's going to be a slow roll with that information, all right? It's not going to be something that is like super, we're not sending out a bunch of information at one time because it's a practice that needs to be slow rolled out, in my opinion. That's true. The other big announcement that I have for this week is that my sessions are back open. Oh, so good. They've been closed for about a month and a half now. It's been a while. And I think what I'm starting to realize, because every time I stop doing sessions, I'm like, this is it. I'm done forever. And that is wrong every single time. Every single time I'm like, I'm done. It's a period of time and then I end up coming back. So I think that is quite funny to me. I'm learning about the fact that I do need to take time to rest in between like going through, and because sitting with you guys, it helps me learn too, and it helps me bring more information to the people, for the people, and so I need time to kind of like rest and digest with that information in between doing like a lot of sessions, and then it is what it is. So right now the books are open. There was 46 hours, but there was a booking that came in this morning. So I think it's going to be, what would that be, 44 hours? So there's 44 hours of sessions available through the end of the year. So if you would like to sit in session with me, it is astrology sessions. For people who are unfamiliar with those sessions, just a little brief breakdown. There's astrology birth chart readings, and that's going to be very focused on just you and your birth chart. There are also change readings, astrology change, and those are going to be focusing on if you wanted to understand how the transits are also affecting you with your birth chart, and looking at if you needed to plan anything or learn how to utilize those transits with what's going on in your birth chart. That's the astrology change session. What other ones? I do offer vision readings, tarot readings. Those ones are going to be, there's a couple different ones that are available, so if you wanted to check those out. And then I also am offering mentorship space as well. That's going to be astrology focused. And so that would be more of like the magical lens of things, if there's practices that you wanted to bring in, or if there's just different things that you wanted to utilize about your birth chart within your life that you are looking to have a more magical perspective, rather than in the birth chart reading having me sit and tell you about your placements and tell you about yourself. The mentorship space is meant to be more of a magical perspective so that you are able to receive the tools that you need for your practice and figure out, you know, like if there are certain practices that you want to practice, or really anything magic based. That's going to be more of the mentorship session. We might not even technically sit and talk about astrology, but I'll pull up your chart just in case. So those are the sessions that are available. Thanks so much for booking with me and for the support. Right now, I know they're going to close at some point. I don't know when that's going to be in this current moment. So that's that. That's what it is. I'll be available for now, and I'll take time off when I need a break, and then I'll come back because that's just how I swing, apparently. Ridiculous. I can't believe it took me like 3 years to figure that out. But you know what? Sometimes we're blind to things until we're not blind to them anymore, and then we can see, and it's pretty easy. True. Any other important updates you'll be able to find down below. True. So let's get into it. Let's get into what's happening. November 10th through the 11th, we have our moon in Pisces. All right, so for those of you who haven't been on the show before, I focus more on the moon cycle. We're going to travel with the moon cycle, and any other important stuff that's happening, we're going to point that out along the way. And I've been really so sick. So thanks so much for your patience while I get back on the internet. I don't know, you can still kind of hear it in my voice today, but not really. I'm doing a lot better than I was, but it knocked me out and knocked me over and asked me to sleep for a while. So that is true, and I'm grateful to be back with you. Also true. I literally, while I was sick, I was like, I had all these ideas and I was like, I just want to get up and like go work, but my body was like really fighting for me. So anyways, let's get into the week. Okay, November 10th through the 11th, we have our moon in Pisces, and this one's going to be interesting. We're headed into more illumination. We're not quite at the full moon yet, but we have had our first quarter moon, so we're more in the light. There's more clarity on our emotions, and the reason I say this is going to be interesting is because Saturn right now is, and Saturn goes direct this week. When is that? What day is that on? That's on the full moon. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. This week is gonna be weird. Oh man, this week is gonna be weird. This is gonna be a weird week. This is gonna be a really weird week. What the heck? I forgot about Saturn going direct. How do you forget about Saturn going direct? I don't know, but I did. Hold on, let me write it down. Saturn goes direct November 15th at what time? 2:21 a.m. UTC. Friggin' weird, dude. Okay. Yeah, this week is gonna be weird. This week is gonna be really weird. It's gonna be kind of polarizing. Polarizing? Is that a good word for this? Polarizing? To be in the extremes. And this week is gonna be very much, polarizing. It might be polarizing. It'll be polarizing. It'll be a polarizing week. It feels like internally and externally, like in our society and what's going on, and also internally, like you might feel a little bit polarized. Just remember within those different polarizations that you are allowed to feel and work in both of those extremes at the same time. They can both be together. I don't know what this is, but you know what? It kind of fits for the polarizing. Move over, come back, move over, come back. So there's gonna be like a polarization. The other thing that it reminds me of polarization is like the ice caps, like the polar bears, the polar ice polarization. So there could be some things, because the way I look at ice in my practice is consecrations. This week is a week for consecrations. It's like there's some things, the reason that things are feeling very polarized this week and very extreme, like in those extremes, the polarization means that things are being finalized. They're being finalized. The reason that your heart may feel extreme or your life might feel more extreme right now is because we are in finalization, consecration, unification of spirit and earth true time. That's the time that we're in this week. And that's also why I say weird, because, oh man, weird is like, yes, a weird feeling, but weird is also the word weird, a little extra Norse cool thing in this show. Weird, our word weird comes from weird, which is like the name for fate in Norse. So weird and weird. So whenever we say, oh, like, oh, that's so weird, we're literally saying like, oh, that was fate. That was fate that happened. That's where that saying comes from. So when I say this week is going to be weird, I mean it in like, oh, this week is going to be kind of strange. And also, maybe there's a little bit of fate going on. One of the things about fate that I realized with astrology is that when we get to the end of things, that's where fates wrap up and they're arriving. It's like time for the arrival of the fate. We've watched you, not me specifically, we being like metaphorically the spirits that are around you, okay? We've watched you walk through this transit. We've watched you walk through this space. We've watched you walk through this, and we've seen how you've been moving. We've seen you weaving these things and making these decisions, resting, activating, what have you, how have you responded to these other things that have been going on. And so at the end of that, it's like, we've seen that, so here's going to be something delivered. Here's this final decision from us, like this bigger perspective, this bigger decision. Us being, again, the spirits of like larger who are around you. So that's one thing I've noticed about those endings. And we do have a couple of things ending this week. We have Saturn that's going direct. So we have the end of that. Venus is also going to be moving into Capricorn. So we do also have the end of that, moving out of Sagittarius. And thank goodness, because this conversation between Jupiter and Venus, I'm so over it. I'm so done. I'm so done with the conversation. And I mentioned it in our last episode about this like back and forth between Venus and Jupiter being like our internal feminine and masculine, and like the feminine and masculine of the world, also like external, whether that be on a person-to-person relationship or just generally speaking, like feminine and masculine have been having this really big back and forth conversation where the masculine has been looking backwards and the feminine is like, it's time for the future. What are you doing? Like, we can't keep having this conversation. So the fact that we have Venus moving on into Capricorn, we have some pretty big shifts to come, especially too because Pluto is still in Capricorn right now. Pluto will not be in Capricorn for the entirety of this transit with Venus, but since it's here, it's going to affect that space. And also Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. So the fact that we have Venus moving into Capricorn and then we have Saturn that's going to be going direct, there's some things that are really about to move forward. But first we have to have this brief look behind us. So let's get back into the timeline. That's why I say that's just a big general overview for the week. We're going to get more into the specifics as we move along. November 10th through the 11th, the moon is in Pisces. During this time, we do still have Saturn that's going to be retrograde. Like I said too earlier, it's going to be more of the illumination. We're moving more into light. And this is a time, we just had an eclipse in Pisces. About, what was that, 2 months ago now? Yeah, like 2 months ago. We just had an eclipse in Pisces. So this is definitely a moon where pay attention. Pay attention to what? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Pisces and Neptune energy. Pisces and Neptune is the spiritual veils. The way that I like to describe the relationship between Scorpio and Pisces is that Scorpio, because it's Scorpio season still, Scorpio is the death and the rebirth. And so we have these two kind of like bookends, but Pisces is this transitional story that happens in between the life and the death, or the death and the life, depending upon how you're looking at that construction in that moment. I guess that's true. Destruction, construction, death, rebirth, birth, death, you know, the order of things. If you wanted to switch it up, it could be. That's true. Okay, so that's how I describe their relationship, though, is that Pisces is like the veiled space, or like on Halloween, for instance, when we have the veils go down, like, where is Pisces? We have where are the veils? You know, they have thinned. They have been regarded as not as, how do I say, not as thick. They have thinned, so they're not as thick. Ridiculous. Sometimes words, that's a thing. Okay. Moving on forward though, so silly. So having the moon there, having just had this eclipse in Pisces, it was a full moon eclipse in Pisces, and we are headed into the North Node being in Pisces. So we are about to be asked to do a lot of different things spiritually over the next several years. And my personal feelings about Saturn kind of going through Pisces at the same time that the North Node is about to enter into Pisces, I feel like we have been given this great opportunity with Saturn being in Pisces to really get our spiritual lives together. Since, when was it? March of 2023 is when Saturn entered Pisces. I feel like I'm going to be saying that until it leaves, which is like a while because it still is going to retrograde next year. But anyways, yeah, we've had this like moment of just get your spiritual life together. There's a lot of people too that I've done sessions with over the previous like 6-ish months who are newer to a practice, and they started practicing around the time that Saturn entered into Pisces, or around the time that Saturn went direct in the later half of 2023. So we have this very interesting kind of like ramp up, or like there's more people that are being presented into like this spiritual face of things right now, because Saturn, we're restricted there in the sense of like we have to be there, and that's why it's restricting. So we have to be with our spiritual lives right now, we have to be within our spirit, we have to be within our practice, we don't get a choice. It doesn't matter what we're doing, where we're spending our time, and who we're with. It is spiritual in this moment because Saturn right now is in Pisces. I also think it's very interesting too that Saturn and Neptune are wrapping up their transits at the same time through Pisces. Neptune is a long transit. I think it's like 162 years. Let me double check on that. It's a while. 165 years. So Neptune takes a while to go all the way around. Saturn is about 30 years. That's like it's like the 27 to 30 that we would consider someone's Saturn return to be. So Saturn is not that long compared to Neptune. So what interesting timing that Neptune has been in Pisces for 12 years now? It's been a while. And we've been focusing on bringing spirituality to the earth, to our lives. We've been focusing on bringing spirituality just kind of around, like it's in its power placement. Neptune is right now. It's at home in Pisces. It rules over Pisces. And so the fact that we have Saturn's placement right now is really interesting. The fact that Pluto too, wrapping up its transit in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, and it's about to move into Aquarius, also ruled by Saturn, but a little bit different because there's also Uranus in it, and it rules over a completely different energy and part of the chart. Saturn it's like very interesting to me that the finalizations that we're going through, that Saturn is very involved in currently, is spiritual. Not ironically either, Pisces is the accumulation of everything that has come before it. That's kind of the other way that I read the Pisces energy. It's the veils and the spirituality and the spirit for sure. It's also too the accumulation of everything that has come before it. It's the finality. It's the final sign. So I think it's kind of interesting and appropriate that we find Saturn in Pisces at this time of like pretty big finalizations. Pluto is exiting Capricorn, and also with the North Node that's going to be crossing into Pisces. So with the moon in Pisces, and we're entering into more eclipses with Pisces energy, and we just had an eclipse in Pisces 2 months ago, okay, which is crazy that the eclipses were actually that long ago. They feel like they were not that long ago, but they definitely were. Weird, that's weird, okay. This moon is going to be a moon where we have a lot of emotional intuition, a lot of emotional, maybe fruition, also like intuition, things coming to fruition. It could be a time like really sitting with the heart. I know that for me, my heart space work recently has been altered or changed. My heart has become one of the things, it's like this new gift that I've been given, and I'm very grateful for it. Normally my visions, and I'll sit and explain some spiritual things for a moment. Normally my visions are very mental. They're very head oriented. They're very head directed. And that was a lot of how my gifts opened up many, many, many years ago when I started practicing, and I was very interested in it. And my gifts were kind of coming to, and I was coming to my gifts at the same time. It was very mental. It was very up here, and very heady, that was what I needed at the time. There was a lot of healing my heart needed to do. There was a lot of things I was still going to go through in between now and when I did start practicing back then. Then my heart just really had to work through those things, you know, and it didn't really have the room to come into those spiritual spaces yet. But recently what I found is that my heart has been sending my head visions. So it's been a little bit different, and that discernment has been changing for myself. So we may find in this, that's just on me on a personal level, but with the North Node moving into Pisces, we do have new gifts, new skills coming in. That happens January 11th. We still have some time for that, but we are in more of like a preparation for it, since we are in between, we're like in between the nodes right now. Even though they're placed somewhere, they're getting ready to transition. They're at 4 degrees right now, so they're getting pretty young. So it's time for them to move backwards soon. And I have a feeling that we're gonna look up in January and be like, oh, well, the nodes have changed. Oh, wow, okay, well, here we are. So at least that's probably going to happen for me. I don't know about you, but yeah. So with that moon in Pisces, a lot of emotional intuition. Following the heart is going to be really important, especially when it comes to anything that you're working with, because Saturn's still going to be retrograde. So before that retrograde goes direct, we're still working on further inspecting, getting our structures and orders together, and really making sure that we are capable, ready, and able, so that when Saturn does go direct, we don't have to deal with not having our lives together, or not having our spiritual practice together, or not having it, because when Saturn goes direct, if you don't have it together, then you have to carry that I don't have it together feeling or structure into when Saturn does go direct. So things usually in Saturn retrogrades, they get pretty serious, like right when Saturn goes retrograde, and then they start to get serious again right before Saturn goes direct, just because it has entered into the energy, and changes with Saturn are sometimes a little bit harsher or a little bit more serious. And so we are in that energy this week of just getting ready, getting prepared. And so following the heart on November 10th to the 11th, and especially when it comes to those structures, those hierarchies, and also anything that might have to do with that Pluto and Capricorn for you and where Capricorn is in your chart. Allow yourself to continue that reinspection. We're almost done, okay? We are almost finished. We're almost finished with that roughness, toughness, and we're about to move on and go into some change, grow into some change. Saturn retrogrades don't always leave a lot of room for like upwards growth. It's kind of like stay at the level you're at right now and figure out what works for you. And if you can do that and then we're moving on and it works for you, okay, congratulations. Now we can work with some of the rewards and the work that you've been putting into restructuring. Now you can put into actually moving forward. So especially for those of you who are working on being like really career oriented right now, or when it comes to some sort of getting your life together, it could be your health, getting your health together. The South Node is moving into Virgo, so that's going to be a part of that node shift in January. So it could be health oriented, it could be friends oriented, wherever that is applicable for you. With Saturn in Pisces, it'll be kind of every area of life. That's just, again, what it is with Pisces. So definitely leading with the heart over those several days is going to be super important. And one of the things I've learned about that as well is, especially, this is kind of a note for, I guess, newer practitioners, because one of the things, like I said earlier, that I've realized is that there's people who listen in and have sessions and things like that who are what I would consider quote unquote newer, or you haven't been doing it for years. There are people who listen to me who have been doing it for years, and that every time that I think about that is like very humbling and a little crazy to me. So thanks for being here also. And yeah, so for people who are a little bit newer, this is kind of a note. Since Saturn is in Pisces, when the moon is in Pisces, if you have emotional intuition about anything, don't deny it. This is not a time for denial. This is not a time that, even if it doesn't make you smile, okay, sometimes with Saturn, things are harsh. That's just what it is. But with the moon there and it being more illuminated, there's probably going to be some information that comes through that is actually really important for you. And this is not a time to be in denial of that heart energy and heart space, especially if you are in relationships where your heart is really connected, and this is a time to really keep that heart protected, especially with Saturn about to go direct. So not a time for denial. Don't put yourself on trial if you don't need to, okay? Don't over criticize yourself. Just sit with it. And sometimes what I've learned about the heart is that sometimes when the heart is smart, we don't understand the logic of it for months or years to come. We don't understand. Sometimes the heart is like, listen, we need to move this way. And the head is not going to get it for maybe a while. So that could be a part of those 2 days as well. Moving into November 11th. So that moon is November 10th through 11th. And then November 11th, Venus is going to move into Capricorn. Venus is moving into Capricorn. And I think this is going to be fairly interesting because, like I said with last week's, like the Venus and Jupiter, I kind of mentioned it earlier too. The Venus and Jupiter conversation, this back and forth conversation that we've been having between the feminine and the masculine, we're not going to have to sit in the heavy energy anymore. Jupiter, retrograde in Gemini, has been ruling over a Venus in Sagittarius. So in the hierarchy of the planets, the masculine that is looking backwards has had a hierarchical seat on top of Venus that was in Sagittarius. So now Venus that is going to be moving into Capricorn, and Pluto's in Capricorn right now. Venus is like, we're done with this hierarchy, first of all. Get it out. I don't need you to sit on top of me. I don't need you to be above me and to tell me about the past. We are finished with it. I love Venus. We're finished with it. Venus is real cutthroat, honestly. We're finished with it. Venus in Capricorn is so detail oriented. Venus is the process of giving and receiving and receiving and giving. Why would you allow someone to give to you? Why are you giving to somebody else? And why are you receiving from someone? Why would you allow yourself to receive from someone? And why would you allow another person to receive from you? Being really detail oriented, understanding how to break down that process for yourself is really, that's where like the self-worth concepts of Venus come in. And when Venus enters Capricorn, we are, oh my goodness, it's a time of retaliation is not the right word. And retribution isn't the right word either. It's not retaliation. It's not retribution. It's a time of refinement. It's a time of refinement. And since Venus is going to be with Pluto, so it says, we're done with this hierarchy. I don't want to sit under you anymore. We're not looking backwards anymore. I'm done with this. This is stupid. I'm over it. Goodbye. And then Venus moves into Capricorn, and it's going to be ruled over by that Saturn that's retrograde in Pisces. So now that feminine energy, the mother energy, womb energy also, if that's applicable for you, is going to be not only moving forward, but we're building power, we're building structures, we're making sure that hierarchically our spiritual systems are sound. Make sure your spiritual systems are sound, because when Saturn goes direct, that's when things ground, where we have the structure, we have things ready to go. Okay, well then we're moving on. So we have a couple of days with in between Saturn still being retrograde and not being direct yet, and Venus being in Capricorn. So we have several days to just look backwards, look at everything you've been doing spiritually. Does it track for you? Does it protect the feminine? How are you protecting the feminine through your spiritual practices? It's a time of refinement within your spiritual practices to make sure that the feminine is protected, whether you would consider yourself a woman or not. That's going to be the energy. And because Pluto's involved, we're able to bind things up how we need them to be. Love you, Pluto. So grateful for that. It also means that this is a time, oh goodness. This is a time where the feminine, Jupiter has had this hierarchical seat over Venus, okay? And when Venus moves into Capricorn, how do I explain this? Oh my God, it has me really excited, and I'm trying to hold it down for everybody, but I'm like really hyped about this happening, so my words are escaping me. This hierarchy falls that's true. The hierarchy between masculine and feminine falls when Venus enters Capricorn. It's making me cry a little bit. I don't know why. Maybe I need to cry on that day too. Oh my gosh. The hierarchy falls, and Venus is like, instead of focusing on, because Saturn is the father of Jupiter, okay? Jupiter has been ruling over Venus, right? So Venus is like, I'm done with your hierarchy. Pardon you. Get rid of it. And Venus moves on and is like, I'm now going to be studying under your father. Okay? You've been using this power over me for how long? We're studying with the big guys now. I don't care about this hierarchy. I'm moving on. We're studying with the big guys. I have Saturn to study with. I have Pluto to study with. We have some power and some hierarchy to earn. And I'm tired of this, so we're not doing it anymore. But Jupiter's going to be retrograde for several more months, so Jupiter's still going to be there. Jupiter's going to be hanging out while Venus and the feminine is moving forward and basically like collecting spiritual wisdom stones. Wisdom gifts, wisdom stones. I don't know exactly how to explain that, but it's just like little tiny bits of wisdom about how the underworld is working with the spiritual and how that position within hierarchy can be a benefit to the feminine figures. Also, because it's Pluto, how can that be done in secret? This could also be a time of feminine organizing, female organizing, feminine organizing, and really taking advantage of this transit is going to look like, for these couple of days at least, clear out anything that within those systems and organizing of feminine, clear out anything that doesn't actually serve your spirit and your spiritual practice, because when Saturn goes direct, we don't have any more time to further inspect what's already been done. We have this brief moment of look back. Okay, this is what happened. This is where we've been spiritually for the previous however many years. If you're someone who is studying like the women movements, I also hear women marches, or like just like the women energy, the woman womb energy, empowerment, encouragement, those sorts of things. Looking at the spiritual aspects of those movements, and looking at the spiritual aspects of those organizations. And I don't know exactly what those movements or organizations would be that you're looking at, okay, but that's the energy of this. This is a time of study and contemplation, refinement. Beautiful, okay? Oh. I'm really excited. I'm ready to be out from under the thumb of that Jupiter energy. I love Jupiter. Listen, love Jupiter. Love Jupiter. What's the saying? Women go to, what is it? Is it girls go to Jupiter to get more stupider? Is that the saying? Hold on. Boys go to Jupiter. Oh, boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge. Yeah, that's the saying. That's the saying. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge. Oh my goodness. I forgot about that one. That's like from elementary school, dude. That's a long time ago. That's a long time ago. I haven't thought about that in a long time. But that's kind of the energy that we've been under, is like this Jupiter. Not that boys are stupider, okay? That's not actually a belief that I have. Having the thumb though of just like looking backwards, and it's like this essence of control kind of the masculine that's been on the feminine, and we get to break that. We're breaking out of it. We're done. And that's why I'm like overly hyped about it. Also, I love Saturn and I love Pluto. Yes, power. Yes, seat of hierarchy. Because personally for me, I love working for that sort of stuff. Like harsh lessons sometimes, yes. Betrayals, manipulation, sometimes it sucks to go through, like more than sucks. Sometimes there's grief and it's just really hard to go through those lessons. But at the same time, what you earn on the other side of it is always worth it, because when Pluto and Saturn come together, not only are you earning a seat of hierarchical structure and power, you have more power than other people can see because Pluto is involved with it, but also people can see you in that power because it's Saturn, and because Pluto and Saturn are together, you know how to protect it. Ugh, I love it. It's gonna be so great. Okay, so that is that, and I'm feeling much more empowered this week than I was in the previous. Not that I wasn't feeling empowered when I made that podcast, but it was very, like, the energy that I got from that podcast last week was just very serious. It was very serious and it was very dark, and that's not how I feel about this week. This week I feel very empowered. There's much more light energy coming in also. Oh, so good. Okay, so that happens on the 11th. Beautiful. Also, oh yeah, crazy, that Venus, so we've talked about the structure of what's going to happen and what that is. Just a little brief, I don't want to get too far into it. We still have a lot to go over in this episode, but I do want to go over it just for a moment. Venus being in Capricorn, Venus is going to be ruling over still the South Node in Libra in this energy, which is that justice energy. It's the balancing energy. It's like being really good at it. Being really good at it. Being really skilled. You already know how to do it. So it's not going to be uncomfortable, even though it's Capricorn, which is crazy to me, honestly. And also it's the dark moon, which is like the dark feminine, the dark mother, and those like indirect influences that if you're not trained to identify them can be harder to identify. It takes a long time of meditations and sifting through the shadows. Like for me, literally years, okay? It took me how many years? It was a long time. It was like 5 or 6 years. It took me 5 or 6 years of doing meditative therapy work to be able to navigate the dark moon spaces in a way where I feel pretty confident that I understand how I'm focusing. So it takes a while, okay? It takes a while. I do not say that to brag. I just say that as in like we are blind sometimes for a reason. It is what it is. Change of season. So Venus is ruling over that. Venus is also going to be ruling over the Uranus retrograde that's happening in Taurus, which is going to be important because, where is it? Because next week, Pluto's going to enter Aquarius, which means that Pluto, which has been helping Venus in Capricorn, okay? Pluto is like, okay, bye, I'll see you later, because Venus is going to go into Aquarius eventually, but while it's still in Capricorn, Pluto's going to be over here by itself in Aquarius. Venus is still going to be over here in Capricorn, hanging out, ruling over Taurus. That's going to be where Uranus retrograde is. That's ruling over Aquarius. So now Venus steps up in the hierarchy over Pluto. Oh my gosh, which means that the feminine energy and power for just a moment before it goes back into Aquarius, before Venus goes into Aquarius, for just a moment, that feminine energy is going to have like another gain or like another step up within hierarchical spaces. Crazy. That's to come later on, but just to give you some like look forward cool stuff. Also too, exciting, yes. Those seats of hierarchy require that you do work though. So make sure that if you are excited about it, stay in the practice, stay in the energy, and remember that is ruled by that Saturn in Pisces. Wherever the 10th house is for you, Pisces is for you, and Saturn is for you. Keep up spiritual discernment, discipline, practices, however it is that you need to. That is the way that you earn that step up. The step up of those planets, if we are to enter into that space where there's a step up and we're not prepared, that's where we can get a little bit like, oh, scary. But if you're prepared, it's usually pretty easy. So just continue with your preparation work because there are some feminine shifts to come in the transits that we have going on. All right. Now, November 12th, we have Mercury in Sagittarius. It's going to enter its shadow period. And this is going to be interesting on like a societal level. I think Mercury retrogrades very, very, it is what it is. All right, but let's talk about the energy of it. So Mercury and Jupiter right now are in a back and forth of they're ruling each other. They're in this beautiful crossover, and Jupiter is retrograde. Mercury right now is direct, but it enters its shadow period. So when it comes to those more masculine attributes, especially when it comes to your dreams, the information of your dreams, and what you've been doing to grow those dreams, how have you been able to work with those aims, those goals, and have you been able to hit your marks? And if not, then why not? That Mercury going into a shadow period, it's going to start to have us bring up things from the past. The way that I work with the pre-shadow period of a Mercury retrograde is that I just notice for myself what's being talked about, what are the issues, and what seems to be important around me within communication. Normally, if I'm focusing on what is important around me in those communication areas, by the time that Mercury retrograde gets here, I have an eye about it, so I'm able to understand where Mercury is moving, how it's moving, how can I relate to it, what do I need to look out for. Mercury rules a big part of my chart though, so I have to keep an eye on it it just, and also like, hello, I talk for a living. That's that. So I have to be aware of it. Yeah. So if you're someone who has like major communications with your work or major communications in your life, keeping an eye on that pre-shadow period can really be helpful, because then the retrograde itself is not as harsh most of the time. Or you have kind of an expectation of like things could go wrong here, just like keep an eye out for that. So that happens on the 12th. Then November 12th through the 14th, we have the moon in Aries. Again, still heading up to a full moon, not quite yet. And then that's going to be with the North Node and with the Chiron retrograde that we still have going on. Feels like that retrograde is never going to end. It will eventually, but it is what it is. This also is going to be ruled by a Mars in Leo, which is indirectly ruled by that Sun in Scorpio. So this moon is going to be really like the dark powers of our mind that maybe we need to leave behind. Or the dark thoughts of our mind that maybe we need to leave behind. It's going to be a reordering and a restructure of how we're thinking about things. Aries rules our head, and it also rules over activation. How are we starting things? It's the primal fire. And so if there's any sort of like primality or animalistic attributes of yourself that need to be either healed, or sometimes when we heal things get triggered first so that it's brought to the surface so that we can heal it. That could be a part of this, not saying that it will be. Chiron's been retrograde for a while, so we've had a lot of time to really work through that, but it could be a part of it, so just pay attention to that for yourself. And generally speaking, this is going to ask us to bring in new thought patterns, new ways of thinking. How are we able also to tap into like our primal thought, and having like this more lighthearted or like up in the air conversation. That's not what I mean by primal thought. Primal thought is, it's, how do I explain this? For me, it's like a feeling. It's like I have this feeling in my mind, and being able to really tap into like the animalistic part of your head rather than tapping into the animalistic part of your body. They're very different. They're similar, obviously. They're both primal, both animalistic, but tapping into that body animal it's very different than tapping into the head animal. And so being really aware of like that primal energy. How's your head rooted to the earth? Especially because, at least for me, I a lot of the times think of my head as what can view up here in the sky, especially on like a spiritual level. It's like, what's up high, what's in the sky. I can see those things, feel those things, hear those things as it needs to be mentally. But with a primal head, and having there be this like emotional illumination on that primal head with the moon that's coming through, and the North Node here, there could be some illumination too, because the North Node is very purpose oriented. And so there could be some things in your head that start to be illuminated of, this is what's been unsaid for this whole time, or this is why you feel called to this thing, especially with the North Node about to end its transit in Aries in the next couple of months. So really having this like final big picture of like, this is what you've been walking in for the previous year and a half with that North Node in Aries. This is why you've been doing that. This is the purpose that you've really been in. This is again kind of like expect the unexpected. I don't know if I said that earlier, expect the unexpected. I said that for another transit recently, but if I didn't say it earlier. But this is kind of expect the unexpected with the mind. The mind could be doing new things, or the mind could be triggered. Or if you need to solve a problem, you could be asked to do new things with your mind. And the triggering of the mind is literally like, maybe there's a trigger point. It reminds me kind of mental health, like mentally what is triggering for you in the mind and the heart connection. With Chiron retrograde, we're really focused on those healing aspects right now, and looking back also at any good, if you're someone who has been in therapeutic practices or has started, so at literally at any point in your life, retrogrades are just before right now. So at any point in your life that you have brought in different practices of the mind to help you cope with things, or kind of like integrate the heart space also, now is a great time to revisit those practices and just have a more healthy space with the head, have a more healthy space with the mind. Chiron reminds us too that we have to kind of work for that health. We have to work for those things to be able to come through within its healing. I love Chiron, and also it's work. Chiron is work. That's just what it is. The fact that we also have those together, the Chiron and the North Node, is like, we may not understand why we're getting triggered to heal certain things right now. It'll probably make sense eventually. Sometimes we're triggered to heal stuff and we just don't understand why. Like, why is this coming up right now? This sucks. I don't want to deal with this. Why is this coming up right now? But give it maybe like 6 months to a year and a half and it might make a little bit more sense. So that's a part of that transit that is true. And then we have, one of my other notes for this week is that we have a lot of oppositions going on. The polarizing, I kind of mentioned that at the beginning. We have Mars and Pluto in opposition. We have the Sun and Uranus retrograde in opposition. And then we also have Chiron retrograde, and where's the other one? And the dark moon are still in opposition. Good golly. And then there was another one, Sun and Uranus. Was that it? Mars and Pluto? Oh, Jupiter, right. Jupiter and Mercury also are going to be. So there's a lot of oppositions. That's part of the polarization. It's just like, really, there's a lot of people shouting over each other at the table. Trying to talk to one another all the way across the table. And it's just like, it could be really loud because of that. Do with that as you need to. That's true. Yeah. And then, all right. November 15th, Saturn goes direct. We haven't gotten to the moon in Taurus yet. The moon is, the full moon and Saturn go direct at the same time, pretty much at the same time. We had the full moon on the 15th in Taurus. The moon's going to be in Taurus from November 14th to the 16th, and then Saturn goes direct. I have the exact time for this one, just in case anybody's curious. Saturn goes direct November 15th at 2:21 a.m. UTC, so translate to your time as necessary. So interesting, so different, especially because that moon is going to be with Uranus retrograde, which is one of the rulers of Aquarius, and Saturn going direct rules over both Capricorn and Aquarius. Pluto's about to make its transition from Capricorn to Aquarius, so there may be some like seeds or smaller things that are happening during this full moon and Saturn going direct, where it's like small things that are actually like ginormous. Small thing that's like you make a small decision, or like there's just this small tiny thing that happens. It's just small tiny little baby seedling is so small and tiny, and then a couple months from now you're like, oh my god, that was actually like gigantic. I had no idea how big that was. I had no idea how big that idea was. I had no idea how big that decision was. I had no idea. I didn't know. I had no idea. Oh my gosh. So that could be a part of this full moon, so just pay attention, especially since Saturn, as it turns direct, is going to go right into Aries. We're not turning back around before we go into Aries with Saturn, so it's gonna be really interesting. And then also too, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. This week has me really excited, and also like it's a lot. It's a lot in a like uplifting, encouraging sort of sense. That's how I feel about this. But still, it's a lot. So yes, because Saturn going direct is also going to be, again, ruling over that Venus. Let me go to that exact chart, actually. When Saturn goes direct, Venus is going to be at 3 degrees, so it's still pretty young. And we have 4 days. 4 days, when I was talking about Pluto and Venus working together, we have 4 days of that while Saturn is direct. So working on now building forward, moving forward. We had about 4 days of the looking backwards with Saturn retrograde ruling over Venus retrograde. This is also, because it's ruling over Pluto too, this is the final 4 days of Pluto being in Capricorn ever, with Saturn direct in Pisces. Neptune is still retrograde, that's true. So we're still looking back at spiritual things on a big picture, generally speaking. I hope you have everything in order when Saturn comes through. I hope you have everything in order. May you be able to have everything in order how you need it to be. because once Saturn comes direct, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Once Saturn goes direct, we don't have time to further inspect. The time is now about, we gotta go. 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 Doesn't matter if you finish your homework yet. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It is time to leave right now. It's time to leave right now. And you know what? Recently, I've been having these feelings. I'm gonna share this with you because I feel like it has to do with the Saturn retrograde, okay? Recently, I've been just living my life. I've been doing normal things. I've been living my normal life, and I'll like be thinking about things or make decisions about things, and I'll be like, oh, that was a little test that I passed. I can just feel it. I'm like, that was a test. That was a test. The way that I responded to that was a test. And I could feel, it's like this tiny little click. Things are clicking into place. When Saturn goes direct, though, we are no longer, there's no more of those tiny little tests of moral character or order that you have within your practice of spirit. No more of that. We are set. We are set. This is who you are. This is what you've done. This is where you've been. Here we go. We have to go forward now. We don't have any more time. We're going. So, yeah. It'll be different. It'll be different. What else needs to be said about that? Because that energy is so different. That energy is so different. It's not, wow, I look stressed. It's not stressing me out. That's why I literally was gonna say it's not stressing me out, but I look stressed. It's like a little, it's just, watch the turntable. Instead of, how do I say? The way that I say that, because I started saying that, about a month and a half ago now. Sometimes the tables turn and sometimes the turntables. Okay, when the tables turn, things get mixed up. Things are chaotic. Things are not as they usually are, not as they should be, which Saturn retrograde can bring that about. Chaos energy, chaos magic is a lot about Saturn retrograde, finding order within that chaos. So sometimes the tables turn, and sometimes the turntables. Sometimes the turn stops and we set it down and we're done. Sometimes the turntables. But sometimes the table turns. So the table's been turning. The table's been turning and turning, and we've been learning, and we've been restructuring and reordering, and the table's been turning, and the tables have been turning, and the tables have been turning. Now the turntables. What happens when the turntables? This is when you get to play your card. This is when you make your move. This is when you're moving forward. So especially, like I said, to people who are career-oriented in their lives right now, or you've been working on building something, especially too if you've been working on like learning. Spiritually speaking, like if you've been learning in your practice, if you've been learning within that and you're ready for a turn to table, like, oh no, this is my turn. That's what happens when the Saturn goes direct. It's your turn. Here we go. This is it. We're moving forward. So let the turntable. I'm super excited. It's also in tarot, it's like when the wheel stops spinning. When the wheel stops spinning. Your wheel has been spinning for a while now. That's Saturn retrograde. The wheel has been spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning. But eventually it lands on something. So where are you landing? Where are you landing? Let the turntable. I'm so excited. It's going to be so good. We might talk about more of that in the next week, probably, honestly, because Pluto is going to be going direct, or Pluto's been going to, not going direct, is going to be moving into Aquarius. Wowzer. Okay, so then November 14th through the 16th, the moon's going to be in Taurus. Full moon on the 15th in Taurus, with that Uranus retrograde that's in Taurus right now. And it's going to be ruled by that Venus in Capricorn. And Saturn's going to be going direct at the same time, which is ruling over. Oh my goodness. The spiritual girlies are about to have a great time with this one. That's how I feel about this. If you have been, that's true. If you're a spiritual person, let me rephrase that. If you're a spiritual person who has been keeping up on your order and you have a healthy relationship with your feminine and also with the father figure, apply as needed, because that's Saturn. If you're someone who has a healthy relationship with congratulations, it's go time. You have learned everything you need to. Everything that you have decided upon and received within this restructure and reorder time, now it's time for us to leave. We're going. And so this moon is very much a time of receiving also. It's Taurus. You may find, because it's Taurus, you may find that you need to rest a little bit more, resting, receiving, making sure that you're feeling comfortable, especially with Saturn going direct, it's like, okay, there's this serious moment of turnaround, and I need to get my feet back on the ground again. I need to get my feet on the ground. I've been floating around. I've been having all these ideas. I've been restructuring, reordering. We've been sitting at the table. We've been doing whatever it is, okay? But it's time for us to get the feet on the ground again. And sometimes that means you have to get used to the new legs. Sometimes it means you have to get used to the new legs. You have to get used to how you're oriented now. It's going to be different. It's going to feel different. You're going to feel different. Your life's going to feel a little different. And so take time within this full moon to adjust. This is an adjustment period. Adjust your life, adjust your will as necessary. Just take the time to adjust. It's going to be different for every single person what that adjustment is. Take the time with your adjustments within that space. Very true. And then November 16th through the 18th, we have the moon in Gemini with Jupiter retrograde, ruled by that Mercury in Sagittarius again. So that back and forth of Jupiter and Mercury. The Jupiter overarching thumb is no longer on Venus though. So this moon is going to illuminate for us like what's happening now that we are no longer in that dynamic. What's happening now that we're no longer in the dynamic where Jupiter is ruling over Venus, where Venus is focused on hierarchy and power and that feminine empowerment. Now that Venus is looking at that and moving forward, Saturn's direct. Now that that's happening, what is happening with the masculine? What's happening with that father energy, possibly also? What's happening? What is that going on? It could be on a personal level, it could be on a collective level, it could be within your community spaces. There's highlight on that masculine, there's highlight within that, and what in their masculine space, the father energy, is there anything about that needs to be shrunken down so it can be depleted? Is there anything within that can be shrunken down so that it can be depleted? And that's going to be on a personal, your inner masculine level. Again, masculine and community is on a collective level, shrunken down so that it can be depleted. And it's going to be happening through communication. Could be communication of words, could be communication of body too. Say that you have a body practice or you're working out, taking walks, things like that, going out dancing, however that works for you. It'll be happening there too. This is also a time where anytime that you're communing with your body, really over the next 6 months, it's a while. With the South Node moving into Virgo, we're starting to feel that body communication kind of come more into the forefront. And that's going to be our easiest form of communication with the South Node in Virgo instead of our verbal communication. So that's going to be a really interesting change next year. But we're starting to feel that, how our body is very easily communicating to us. And I was talking about the primal mind earlier. There's a lot of like primalness going on within that sort of transition. True. So within that moon being in Gemini, definitely take time. What needs to be kind of like broken down or shrunken so that it can be depleted. This is also a time where the visual that I'm getting for this is like a seed that goes backwards in time, back just a seed, so that it isn't growing anymore, and then you realizing that you should have just thrown the seed out to begin with instead of trying to plant it. So having that seed go all the way back down to its origin, like the moon being in Gemini, when is it again? November 16th through the 18th. Go back to the origins of things. How did it originate? And it could be, again, with the masculine, like this big picture masculine involved. It could be relationships. It could be your inner masculine feminine relationship. It could just be your masculine's relationship with your life or your work, or however that works for you. But that masculine, how is that masculine moving? And allowing time for there to be that shrinkage is really important, because once Jupiter goes direct, and we still have a time with that, we still have a ways with that until that happens. But Jupiter, when it goes direct, it's like we need to have pulled out all those seeds so that they do not grow once we start to go direct again. Because one thing about seeds is that you don't know. The origin of it is going to look very different than the entire large tree. So if you have those origins and you realize that you've been growing some things over the previous months or years or however long this is for you, that need to come down back into their origination, back into their origin. Oh, we're done with that now. we're through with that now. This is not probably a moon where there's going to be a lot that is, how do I say this? If you find those origins during this moon, more than likely it's so that you can break it down and make a decision of if it needs to be there or not. But this is very focused on clearing it out, especially with Mercury headed into the shadow period, or in the shadow period of its retrograde. We're very focused on removal. Remove it, especially with this big highlight on the feminine and the hierarchies and the power structures in that full moon too, and like getting it readjusted to that. How interesting. How interesting. Oh, how interesting. What? How interesting. Let there be clarity for the feminine archetype and the mother archetype when we're going through that full moon on a spiritual level. True. There's going to be things to get rid of the moon after that in November 16th to the 18th. And the moon that I was saying, may there be clarity, is the full moon happening. So yeah, there's going to be removal. And part of that removal, it's going to be like, because like I said, it's like we have to get our feet during that full moon. We have to kind of like, we're coming back down to the ground again. We're getting our feet again. We're getting comfortable. We're going to be walking very soon. Saturn, when things turn around, they kind of sit still for a moment. So it'll do that for a time, like a couple days, day or two. And then we have this shift around again. We're moving again. So getting comfortable, taking time to like get your feet back on the ground. And then that moon that's in Gemini, November 16th through the 18th is like, oh, you realize actually there's a mess on the ground. You got your feet back on the ground. It's like, oh, I don't need that anymore. Let's put that in the throwaway bin. I don't need that anymore. That's the donation bin. Oh, I don't need that anymore. I'm getting it out. Get it out. So there could be some things where you look around and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that I was growing this. Like, pluck that weed from the garden. We're done now. So I get a very serious vibe from that energy. The full moon is probably going to be, it's Saturn influenced. So it's probably going to be pretty serious and just like really dense. And then that moon after November 16th to the 18th, when it's in Gemini, very serious removal of masculine. There are seeds that are going to be leaving. Very serious. That's how I feel about that. Very serious. Very serious. Because now we have the dynamic between that Jupiter and Venus has changed, where we have that mother sort of energy has access to more hierarchical structures and power, and also secrets because it's with Pluto, and is no longer under the thumb of. The visual I get from this is like the masculine feeling like it has the control, and then all of a sudden when the moon goes into Gemini, it's like, wait a minute. It's this moment of like, but this wasn't what I thought it was. I thought that I was the one who was I thought I was in charge. I thought I was in control. And it's just this really bright moment of there's no more control in the, how do I say this? There's no more control between the masculine and the feminine. And that's a very serious thing. The feminine's not controlling the masculine is not controlling the feminine. They are now complete two separate things. The feminine has been working in those hierarchies, understanding those secrets and those powers for most of the week. But then that masculine energy, I thought I had control. So allow yourself to move through that as needed and necessary. But that's what I feel in the spirit about that is like, just be prepared for that. People don't like to realize they don't have control. People don't like to realize they don't have control. That's a very serious thing. Reactions could be very serious. Feelings could be very serious. It is the moon that's going to be in Gemini. So, prepare yourself as needed and necessary. Don't say that to scare you, but my work in the spirit has been very serious recently. We're wrapping up Pluto and Capricorn. It's very, very serious. So very serious with that one as well. So just prepare yourself as needed, as necessary, as you feel that you need to. And that's what it is. That's what it is. That's the week. That's great. I'm really looking forward. There's a lot of great energy shifts this week. Again, serious stuff that's going on, true, but I don't get so much of that dark energy that we were in last week. So beautiful. One thing I didn't mention for that full moon, remember to look back on the new moon and any of the work that you were doing or anything that was going on that's important for you, because there's going to be clarity and illumination on that. If you want to take it a step further, look back to the new moon that was in Taurus. When the heck was that? Let me get you a date. May 7th was the new moon in Taurus. So if you look back to the new moon in Taurus, May 7th, that's going to give you some more big picture stuff about what's going on with that moon, the yearly moon cycle for you. If you wanted to do that, if you want to sit in that kind of like bigger perspective, if you feel like it's needed and necessary. So that's it. That's the week. Gratitude, reverence, and love to you. Thanks for being here. Keep up your brew. Keep doing what you need to do. We do still have some more serious transits to astrology, to transit. So just stay on your toes, stay prepared. And this is not time to be scared either. If you have fear sitting around you, a healthy relationship with fear, for sure. Have the relationship with fear that you need to have. Also, though, if you find yourself falling into, this is the spiritual note I'll give after this show. One of the things that I've realized about spiritual enemies, the enemies that we don't see or we cannot always articulate, maybe it's not a person, okay, like a literal spirit, a literal being in the spirit. One of the things I've realized is that sometimes those spirits will come around you and make your spirit feel fear, specifically just so that they can feed on the fear that you have just created. Okay, so with myself, the way that I navigate those different spaces, because of the work that I've been in recently and how serious it's been, and just because of what's going on in the world and how serious the energy is right now, one thing I'll say about those spirits of how do I explain that? If you find fear around you at this time, really check in with yourself and say, like, where is this fear coming from? And does it have a purpose here? And if it doesn't, listen, I love you, fear, but I'm done with you here, and I need to move on into something new. That's how I would handle it. But you do what you need to do. That's just something I wanted to share with you, especially when we have like these big energy shifts collectively that are not just with people who are in spiritual practices. Because we talk about, I feel like in spiritual spaces, energy shifts, and like we're going through and we're doing this work and the energy is changing or our timelines are shifting, or like that's a very like spiritually nuanced term. But when there's big collective shifts that are not only for those spiritual practitioners or only in those spaces where spiritual people might be, the energy can get pretty heavy because there's things that are grounding. There's big things that are grounding. There's large spirits that are grounding. It's time for things to ground also with us being at the end of these retrogrades and the end of Pluto in Capricorn. Like, this is a very serious time. And so if you find yourself in an energy that is not necessarily of benefit to you, whether that's fear or another energy, really check in with yourself and be able to is not the words. Have the courage. Be encouraged. Yes, be encouraged and be brave. It's the bravery to lift yourself up out of that. If you find yourself in fear that's not necessary, or it could be guilt or shame, okay? There's some energies that sometimes I don't feel like are necessary to sit in on a personal level. That's true. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, no. Just depends on the time and the moment. But right now, with those big spirits coming to ground, just remember your wits. Remember your wits. And if you find those spirits around you, don't quit. Don't quit. Keep going, okay? Be in your bravery, however it is that bravery works for you, and be encouraged. This is a time to pick yourself up, feed your spirits. If you do that, okay? Make sure that you're feeding your spirits and the energy that you really want to surround you. One of the most beneficial resistances personally that I have ever found is just to continue to live in love how I want to. So if that is applicable to you, continue to do what you need to do. That's my extra note for this week. This is a pretty long podcast for this week, but you know what? Feels like it's necessary. Feels like it's necessary. It is what it is. Thanks for being with me. I'm not going to drag this out any farther. I'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for the support. And seriously, thank you so much for the support. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Bye.